to the Back to Mind podcast. I'm Koraj from the Positive Movement Project. So, the Back to Mind podcast is a part of the Back to Fit program, which is supported by the Mayor of London's Stronger Communities Fund. This podcast is about helping our listeners to understand their mental health, understand elements of psychology, and hopefully feel positive by the end. So I'm going to start off with a quick 60-second recap about last week's episode, which is still available for you guys if you want to listen to it. And in short, it was about the PACE model, which stands for playfulness, acceptance, empathy, and curiosity. And essentially what I was saying is how you could use each of these elements to improve your personal and professional relationships in your life. Essentially because it was enabling you to have better ways to communicate and understand one another. I was also saying how you can really use this model for yourself as almost as a response mechanism for moments which could either be confusing, frustrating, or even distressing. And all in all, I was saying how it was just a really great model to help break down some of the barriers and gain better insight to yourself and the others around you. So hopefully I've got that within 60 seconds, I hope. But really, I do recommend still kind of going over aspects of the PACE model. If you have a chance and you haven't done so already, do listen to the first episode. It is a bit of a long one, but it's some really good kind of tips there of what you can do in certain situations. So that is the 60-second recap. So in today's episode, I am going to be talking about the idea of being stuck in a rut. And again, I know we're in COVID times, so that could be a feeling that a lot of us are having at the moment because of the pandemic. It could also be a feeling that we've just experienced at a different point in our life. It could be something where we might have just been feeling that before COVID, and and it's just been further exaggerated by the pandemic. So it's a phrase. So stuck in rut has been a phrase that I've used a lot in my life, and I thought, hey, you know what? Let me just actually Google it, and I did, and I'm just going to read out kind of something which stuck out to me. So here goes. The phrase "stuck in a rut" is thought to come from the early 1800s, when wheels from covered wagons would eventually end up in a rut or in a worn groove in a path. Of course, quite literally, being stuck in a rut in that day meant that it would be difficult to get out and move along in the journey. So that sentence really kind of spoke out to me because I genuinely feel like life is a journey from A to Z. A being birth and Z being death, not to be morbid, but that's just how I see it. And we are just at different points of the alphabet at different points in our life, sort of thing, different parts of the path. And sometimes we meet people which help move us forward, and sometimes we find ourselves in situations which could be our undoing, but we feel like we can't move. These could be also situations which are completely external, things that we have no control over. It could be financial, it could be something like a pandemic, which just stops us from moving forward. And this kind of idea that when you are stuck, the impact this could have on somebody is massive. And actually, some people don't even know they're stuck in a rut, but they're just being emotionally affected by that situation. So for me, when being stuck in a rut, what I've noticed for myself, which I'm going to share a personal story in a moment, but and with other people I've seen, is this sense of you can see that they have no control. You can see it from them. They feel like they have no control. That it kind of comes out of this sometimes blaming other people as a result. There's a lot of frustration, there's a lot of aggression, there's a lot of strains on relationships around that person. So it could be a loved one, it could be a professional relationship, and so on. There's sometimes a lack of energy, a lack of drive, and there's a lot of time as well being irrational. This idea of just running away. If I run from my problems, it's not going to be an issue anymore, or just ignoring it until the point of trying to convince yourself that it's not an issue anymore. And sometimes it's even more kind of destructive behaviors which come as a response. Weight gain, for example, comfort eating, substance abuse. I know for myself, when I found myself in that point, I did suffer a lot of weight gain, and I did turn to alcohol quite a lot, in this kind of idea that, I could just numb the pain. But if anything, like anyone knows, alcohol exaggerates the emotions that we're feeling. So if you're anxious, if you're angry, if you're upset, those are just going to be further exaggerated by having massive alcohol consumption. So this idea of being stuck in a rut is just it's a horrible feeling that I think Yeah, I think it's very common too, though. I think a lot of people find themselves stuck in a rut because of just, sometimes it's been unrealistic expectations of ourselves. Sometimes other people put those expectations on ourselves, so we feel like we're failing, or and so on. And sometimes we just don't know what we want anymore, and because of just kind of going through the motions, just trying to get through life, as such, you just find yourself trapped. So I'm just going to share kind of a moment in my life where I found myself in a rut. And at that point, I didn't even know I was in a rut. I just knew something wasn't quite right. So this was, back in 2019, midway through 2019, I found myself just in a really bad place. I found myself very angry. I found myself upset, blaming all the people around me, from family to friends to, to Terry as well, for, work related aspects of it, and ultimately it kind of ended my relationship with my partner. So again, I didn't know quite what was going on. I just knew I wasn't okay. So I was on the blaming stage, blamed everyone around me, and I thought, hey, you know what? If I just get rid of the people around me, surely everything will be okay. It didn't quite work out that way. I ended things with my partner that I didn't actually want to do, but I felt like that's what I had to do, and things didn't improve. I then convinced myself if I was to run away from my issues, so leave everyone behind and move on, oh, that might do. So I convinced myself that New York was one of the favourite places that I've ever gone to, and I would love to live there. And I convinced myself if I just left everything, work, family, go and live there, everything will be great. Financially, that's not possible, so it wasn't a great idea. But then I still tried to convince myself and going, no, but I'm just going to need to leave everything behind in some capacity. Can't do that right this second, but I will. Um, so for me, that's again really an irrational way of thinking, because although if you were to, in theory, but leaving the situation that you're in, you might get light relief from it, because obviously you can have moments of clarity, which is great. And being away in a new environment and so on, obviously it comes with its own excitements and stuff like that. But because a lot of the time when you're stuck in a rut as well, because it's to do with yourself, and especially if it is very personal and so on, for the reason why you got in that rut in the first place, it could be the fact that by just running away, you're not dealing with it. So ultimately, it's just going to catch you up again. So I think that's why it's far more impactful to actually do something about it, rather than just either running away or ignoring it. Because everyone knows also, if you ignore things, issues are still there. You can convince yourself otherwise, but it, again, like I said, it comes and catches you. And a lot of time when you're least expecting it as well, which is usually what's worse in those sort of situations. So yeah, like I said, I went through this moment, no idea why or what was happening, but then I let it impact on the people around me. I lost a person that I loved more than anything, as a direct consequence. And yes, we had our issues and so on. Could we have worked through it had I understood what was going on with me? Probably, most definitely. But it didn't pan out that way in the end, because I didn't take that time for myself. And so yeah, that happened, and then afterwards it just spiraled a bit more out of control, really, with my behaviour, the way I was just acting, and just the way I was like, yeah, towards people around me. I know I wasn't particularly nice during that time as well. And if anyone knows me, I tend to be that funny person which just wants to make people laugh and smile. So that's when you know something's not quite right with me, when I'm not that kind of fun Care Bear sort of character that I describe myself. And it's so this was 2019. So coming into 2020, convinced myself 2019 was a horrible year. Of course, 2020 was like, surprise. Um, this is going to be the worst year ever. And during the first kind of lockdown, I found I mentioned this in the first episode. I found myself having a moment to reflect on life. Essentially, when you're given time to not do anything, the best thing to do is usually to look back at things. Not in a way to dwell, obviously, because that's not a productive way. Using it to kind of attack yourself wouldn't be great. But I used it to go, hold on, what? Surely there needs to be something different here. Something has to change. This isn't quite right. And I had to try to remind myself, what is it that I've set myself out to do? I kind of, a big issue of being stuck in a rut is that you kind of forget who you are as a person. You lose that sense of identity a little bit. because you get wrapped up by that situation that you're in or you can't avoid, and so on. So I completely just forgot who I was, what my goal was, and then I took that time to remember. And for me, it was to be a therapist. I said to myself, like, some of the goals I set myself was I want to have my own theatre company. Check, done that, and so on. But one of the ones that I set myself was I want to one day become a therapist. And I thought to myself, you know what? Why not? Why not? And it was that moment where it's like a light bulb which switched on, and this force of energy which kind of came through me. Like people who, my family and stuff like that, who saw this kind of side of me before, which has all this energy, and said that they hadn't seen that from me in a good couple of years. I was almost like a shell of who I was. That suddenly just seeing me like that again just brought them all so much joy, because I was, you know, I felt alive again. Essentially, I felt like I had a purpose again. So kind of that really was, out of all the things that 2020 brought to so many people, sadly, like in terms of just stress and everything, like, I think certain people have used that time for their benefit to just kind of recheck with themselves, rebalance themselves almost as such, to go, hold on, okay, how life was before wasn't quite right. So when things, in theory, should go back to normal, it's like, no, I'm going to do something different about it. Um, and I know for me that's what it was. So I put all the plans in motion and such, and I started my course. So I'm in my first year, which is all great, and I'm learning so much from it. And from the learning that I've done so far, I've been able to identify that actually back then it was because I was stuck in a rut, and that's why I was making those choices that I was making, and why it was affecting my relationship. So it was funny that even so, a lot of that time I had no idea I was in a rut. It took, kind of breaking it down a little bit further with, professionals who are training us essentially, to kind of help identify that. So I do really say that, communicating is such an important way to cope with, when you're stuck in a rut. It's easy to keep yourself shut off from the world, not want to tell anyone. Maybe you're embarrassed, or maybe you just don't know how to. And it's okay to not know how to. It's the point is, people can be quite complex, so it's okay if it comes out as a jumbled mess and then you try to make sense of it afterwards. But we're social people, and we're supposed to be able to, we're at our strongest when we're able to listen and support one another. So take that help when you can, or try to search for that help if you know if you need it. Go to therapy, go to a counselor. These people are there to help you find the tools in yourself to cope and move forward. So don't see it as a sign of weakness, see it as a sign of strength, because you're not accepting that this is the way things should be, because it's not correct, and actually doing something about it, being productive about it. That's what's important. It's, you know when you're stuck in a rut, be productive. Explore, what can be done differently. And I was looking at a few articles which were talking about kind of what happens when you're in a rut. And I think, again, it's accepting that. One of the things they talk about is accepting the situation, because denial is not going to help anybody. Or going, I'll deal with it another day, tomorrow I'll deal with it, or so on. you know Things won't change unless you go, okay, it's not quite right. And then being, so the word that I used before, which was like, acceptance and curiosity and empathy and so forth. It's show yourself compassion during those times, to actually go, I'm not okay, and I'm not going to blame myself for it, but I am going to do something about it. Like I said, it's okay to be sad, it's okay to be angry and stuff and so on. So don't get up, don't hold that against you for feeling those emotions. Just know that, if you're feeling them at a prolonged length of time, that's when something has to be done. So, show yourself compassion, don't deny it, and try to identify the cause. If you can do it yourself, that's great. But, like, other people need support and help to identify that. I know I did. Because I set myself too hardcore expectations on myself of what I should have achieved by certain points in my life. And although I hadn't had that conversation with myself in a long time, I was still holding those values against myself, going, well, I haven't done this, I haven't done that, so clearly I'm a failure. And then going, oh, I should just kind of give up. And I was having all those conversations in my unconsciousness almost. I wasn't having it to myself, and then convincing myself that I'm a failure, essentially. So yeah, try to identify that cause, try to go deeper with it, but whilst doing that, also have time to, like I said, not running away from a situation in any capacity, but removing yourself just for a moment to give yourself some clarity, I think is important. Uh, whether that's some time off, just to even get like sports, for example, is a great way to take your way self out of that situation. And plus, obviously, we know the benefits you get from when you're working out. Uh, you know, um, and how that affects your mind and stuff like that. So sometimes that like feeling refreshed after doing a workout or something like that might help you just be a little bit kinder to yourself and go, okay, I'm feeling a little bit better now. Let's try to see what's going on. Um, and like I said, when you're going deeper, when you're trying to identify the cause, I try to identify what that emotion is. If like, is it this kind of sick feeling that you have in the stomach? Is it this kind of this I don't want to do this, or I don't want to be here, or I not again, not today, and these what are those things? Try to identify, note them down every time you feel it, and so on. Um, and on the flip side as well, just identify things which do make you feel happy, because it's important to hold on to them. Because if you have to delve into something which might be a bit traumatic, might be a little bit upsetting, it's good to have the things which on the flip side give you strength and positivity, so that when things might get a bit tough, you can rely on them just to kind of hold you, ground you for that moment, so you're not completely overwhelmed by emotions, particularly if they're based around negative emotions, so on. Um, and other things like some things, pointers that I saw in the articles, is ideas of like having a look over your goals, what your expectations are, what you set yourself. That I said for myself, I set myself way unrealistic expectations, and as soon as it's unrealistic, you beat yourself with it because there's no chance in hell you're going to achieve it. So look into what is it, and then try to remind yourself what some of those expectations are, and try to go, okay, how can I achieve them now? Because it might be the case that you've wanted to do something for a very long time, and because you haven't done it, also might, you know, it's actually something achievable, but you just haven't had a chance. So go and put some time and effort into it and allow it to happen. But again, only if it's realistic. If it's, I wanted a mansion by the time I'm 30, and, in something, in a situation where that wasn't possible at that point, there's no point using those as your goals. But if it was the case of going, I want to train and do something in my life, or I want to change jobs and stuff like that, they are steps that which can be taken to slowly um, be done to allow you to meet those goals. And that was something which was said as well, is make small changes. The rational things of trying to restructure your whole entire life within a second as well, not brilliant. So if it is small, take small steps to bigger goals, by making it more realistic, to go, okay, I'm not at a point in my life where I'm not happy. Okay, what is it which would make you happy, and how can you get there in a realistic time frame, and then make those changes one at a time. Don't change multiple things at the same time, because it's just too much to manage. Almost using it as a tick box, rather going, okay, I've done this now, so that feels great, okay, let's move on to the next sort of thing. And remember, self-care during it all, really important to take moments to exercise, to take breaks, to have moments of meditation in a sense. Like I said, you don't have to be spiritual to meditate, or it's good to clear your mind, uh, balance foods and stuff like that. I've had horrific weight gains during those sort of times, because I'm not, and they all have a knock-on effect. They just exaggerate those worst feelings, because you eat horrible junk food constantly. Again, that just brings you down. You're already not feeling great, brings you down even further, and so on. So that's why it's important not to get hit by those poor sort of decisions, because and of not looking after yourself, because that's just going to exaggerate things. Right, so this is the end of the episode. I hope you guys have got a lot from it, but kind of what I really want to end it on is just like highlighting kind of what I hope you got from it, really, is this idea of just keep communicating with the people around you. Identify when you aren't feeling quite right, and letting people know that around you, because then that's more likely when you're able to go, okay, I need to do something about this, and people can help support you on that journey. Also, by sharing your experiences might mean that, so for example, if you're someone who has gone through it and come through to the other side, sharing your experiences with other people who might be going through it themselves, being stuck in a rut, might help them figure out what they could do potentially for themselves, might help them piece a few puzzles for themselves. I would also say, you know, sharing those connections and so on just makes people not feel like they're alone. Furthermore, if you need actual support as well, go for professional support. Go to therapists, go to counselors, and so on, because at the end of the day, they are there to help you navigate through life, help you identify what some of your issues may be, and help you put steps in for yourself to navigate and go through. Uh, that's the power of a therapist, and when you have that moment, when you have that professional support, the world's your oyster. So don't look at it as going, oh, that must, if I'm seeing a therapist, that must mean I'm crazy. No, it means you're an incredibly strong person which is willing to do something to change the situation that they're in and to push forward. So all in all, is today's episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope everyone has a great weekend, and I look forward to bringing out the next episode next week. So just remember, you're not on your own, and thank you for listening. My name is Coraj, and I'm from the Positive Movement Project. Take care.